Hello and welcome back. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you an update on Litko tokens for Age of Sigmar. This is wave 2 of his array of tokens, which for a game that really is just begging for tokens. There's just so many status effects and spell effects and unit effects that and it really helps you keep track of the game, and I think it actually enhances the play. Unless you're playing a massive game where you have tokens strewn all over the place, it really doesn't. I don't think it takes away from the gameplay at all, and I think it actually helps smooth over some of the record keeping aspects of the game, and even in smaller games, it just makes things flow so much better. If you've played any kind of other games, there's so many games out there that have tokens to them. It's just not something that's new or intrusive or innovative to have tokens on the battlefield. You know, we're not doing historical gaming, and even then, you know, you play games like Bolt Action, and there's dice sitting right next, you know, order dice and pin markers and stuff. So it's nothing new, nothing uncommon, but it's great to have these sets for the Age of Sigmar game. And this next wave really addresses some of the needs that are just were missing in wave 1 and missing in a lot of other token selections for a lot of other suppliers and manufacturers of these types of tokens. And Litko just makes fantastic quality tokens. They're very clear, they're very bright, they have color selections that differentiate between the types. I think this set is just a much better set even than the first one. I think the first wave was definitely essential, and it even had that kind of like a scroll that you could, with a wet marker, where you can, a wet erase marker, that you could write down some of the more unusual or mundane type effects that don't come up very often. But there was a real need for some of these tokens that are much more common, and maybe you know, the specifics between some of them they just didn't cover in the first wave, and now they've addressed a number of them. The first one is, you could take a look at the lower part of the screen, and that is certain types of effects like inspired presence, empowered, blessed, and whatnot. These are heroic. This is from the Triumphs. Now, you may or may not be playing Triumphs. If you're not, you're really not playing Age of Sigmar to its full effect, because the way to play the game, there's no wrong way to play, actually, and I should correct myself. But one of the greatest ways to play Age of Sigmar is playing a string of games that are connected, whether through a campaign or just do a string of games where the next one has an impact. The next one is impacted by the win or loss of the previous one, and they have some minor effects. So these are really nice to have because you can get some benefits from these based on who won the previous game, and now you can put that on the tabletop. The next one right above it is, you know, Endure, Assassinate. These are the sudden death type options. Now, the reason why I think that this is important is because while you probably aren't going to forget what the sudden death conditions are, it's important to know sometimes what the unit, character, or piece of terrain is that applies to sudden death. If you have a seized ground, you want to know that that's your target. If you have a assassinate, you want to know that character is your target, and it's good to have that visual reference. In the same way as the token in the first wave was for the general, or for things like inspiring presence for command abilities. So those are really good. Now, I like the next set that's a little bit off to the right, which is some of the like reroll fails, reroll 1s and 2s. There's so many of these different options depending on the army and the unit that I think it's important to differentiate, because in the first wave we had things like reroll 1s. Reroll fails means anything, so you fail your armor save, for instance. That's a big one. And reroll 1s and 2s. I wouldn't necessarily use these for every effect, but there's important. I mean, if it's innate to the unit, you should know the actual war scroll that you're deploying, and you should have a pretty good idea of what your opponent is. But if it's a spell effect or a command effect or an ability of some kind, it's important to put that stuff down, because that stuff is it may be temporary. It may only last till the next hero phase or whatnot. Some of those things are important to note because they're different from the standard. So if you get to know your war scrolls, you'll know this you'll know the actual abilities. But these are good to note when there's a change, an upgrade, or a downgrade. Then there's a summon unit one. Now, this is not one that you really need, but it helps. There's a couple of scenarios, and you probably may have, if you think about it, there may be even more of these that you could, come up with. The only situations where I see needing a summon unit token is if you want an ease for record keeping, where you have a unit that's summoned and you want to determine if that unit is slain. That this should, for bookkeeping purposes, for accounting purposes, that those models count towards victory conditions when you're calculating percentages of models slain versus what you started with. It's not that necessary, but I think it helps. I think that the other situation could be in a comp situation, in a tournament situation, where some comps on some tournaments want to denote these summon units because they may have a situation where if the caster is slain, all summon units disappear. There's a lot of unusual situations, a lot of unusual rules and comps that I've seen people proposing online. So rather than have anything specific to each one of those, which would be cumbersome and untenable, it's good to have a token if you want to use something to denote that this unit was summoned, it didn't start at the beginning of the game. It's not essential, but if you have a need for it, whatever your purpose is, then it's nice to have that token. The next one I think is also very important, which is a battalion token. Now, if you take just the battalion itself as your army, the formation is going to have rules that'll cover your whole army. But there's a lot of cases where you take a battalion formation and then you take some extra units. Like the battalion may be the core choices that you take to fulfill the battalion so you can get the extra rules. You take the units and heroes that are required. But then you may take something else, something in addition, or several things in addition, because some of these battalions can be rather small. And then you want to be able to dictate which specific units are part of that battalion and which aren't. For example, if I took the Ogre Beastclaw Avalanche, I might take a third unit of Mornfang Cavalry, or a second Stoneclaw, or a second Thundertusk. And the actual battalion only covers 2 units of Mornfang, 1 Stoneclaw, and 1 Thundertusk. So if you have any extras beyond that for the battalion, those extras aren't supposed to get the actual rule, at least the way I'm reading it. So it's important to note what the battalion is and put those markers down. Now, of course, if you're taking 2 battalions in your selection, which is totally reasonable, it'd probably be good to get some different colors in the battalion markers. And maybe that's something that that Litko might actually include in a wave 3. And the way I would do it if that was the case is I'd probably turn this upside down or use a wet erase marker to denote the separate battalions, because these only come, as far as I can see, in the green color. The ones at the top, there are 3 sets, and I love that they're separated by color. There's 1 red for the debuffs. There's a yellow version, which is all the kind of rerolls. And then there's a kind of a light greenish, which is more of any pluses to any of these rolls. And you can see that they're all consistent with shapes for the various different types of abilities. So you kind of have like a hammer for attack modifiers, a hand for casting, kind of a lightning arrow for a charge, a banner for the bravery, a shield for save, and so on. The skull for wound. These are really good for easy visual reference, especially when you're picking up these tokens from a box or bags, because obviously you can have a lot of different tokens for all these effects, and I separate them out by these little drawers and these compartments in these plastic box cases that I have. But still, it's really good and it's important to have some kind of visual reference for ease and quickness of use. And I like these because they really cover some of the more very common effects that you see, but we didn't see again in Wave 1. For instance, You know, when you have -1 to bravery, or -1 to your run, or -1 to hit, which may not be that common, but it does happen, especially with spell effects and some unit effects. Things like -1 to shooting, or negative to the to your saving throw, to the saves. You know, these are, it's good to have them, and I like that they're all in red. The reroll ones, we see a lot of effects that are rerolls. Certain heavily armored units, like the dwarf iron breakers. You'll see them with a lot of elf units. They get a lot of rerolls, so it's really good and important to have those. Again, I wouldn't probably put them in for each unit, where because then you'll have more tokens that are kind of extraneous. I'd probably put them in for enhancements on top of what you already know if they don't apply, because again, you should know your war scrolls. But it's important because those things would be the kind of things where you'd pick the token up when the spell effect goes away. But there's plenty of those types of spell effects, command effects as well. I think the one that I would probably see the most of is the ones where you get +1s. There's a lot of abilities that are +1s. You'll see them, for instance, with units of certain sizes. You'll see them with different command abilities, but I think they're a little bit more common. I know that we had, in the first wave, for instance, a Mystic Shield token, which denoted a +1. It's nice that there's a +1 to the save here, which could be another type of a status effect. Overall, these are really well manufactured. They're very clean. They're very well made. They look good. They don't take away from the table, and they do catch your eye, so you can keep track of what's going on in the game. So if you're interested in this, I'm going to put a link down below for Litko, but you can go look at Litko, Litko, and go check them out. They've got tokens for all manner of games, and I love using these in the game. They really have helped make what it was already a kind of a streamlined game that's supposed to be moving quicker, move even that much quicker. So I hope you enjoy this, and have a great day, everybody.